Get out of that seat now. I won't ask you twice. 3 words, 2 breaths, 1 entire cabin shifting on its axis. And suddenly a woman in a hoodie is the most dangerous thing on the plane. You'd think power makes people loud, but sometimes it just makes them cruel. My name in this story is Mara Ellis, not the real name of anyone you've heard about before. And this is what happened to me on a private jet on a snowy Christmas Eve, the kind of night where airports look like they forgot how to be gentle. This is also a story about what happens when someone assumes they know your place and what it costs them when they find out they were wrong. Act 1. The seat, the snow, the assumption. We landed at Millbrook Airfield under a whiteout. The ramps were a watercolor of lights and blowing snow. Most people were stuck in terminals, but in the private world things happened on schedule. Champagne popped, shoes clicked, chauffeurs idled, and a bombardier-like aircraft sat like a dark promise on the tarmac. Inside, leather smelled of polish and citrus. The thermostat was set to warm enough to make you forget winter, and I was folded into the best seat on the plane with a paperback and a hoodie over my head. I looked like someone trying to sleep through a layover because that's what I was that night. Tired from meetings, from flights, from being present everywhere so other people could feel safe. I had a boarding authorization, a name on the manifest, and the right to occupy that seat. Captain Lawrence Hale walked in like he owned the air, his uniform starched and morale swearing in the way men like that sometimes wear confidence. He glanced at the manifest, glanced at me, and in that tiny exchange decided I was not supposed to be there. "Excuse me, miss," he said. But it wasn't an apology. It was a tag team ask him, and the VIP they were expecting arriving in 3 strides would reclaim the throne. 2 minutes later, Chloe Drummond arrived, dripping designer fur-collared and wired to outrage, and beside her a businessman with a tie too serious for a Christmas flight. Chloe's smile landed like a stamp across the plane as if she had officially claimed the light, the leather, the view. "Who is this?" she said, pointing like she was naming trash by its label. Captain Hale puffed up muscles and officiousness aligning. "There was an error with dispatch," he said. "This seat is reserved for our charter clients." I told them quietly that I was on the manifest and that the flight had been cleared. Their replies were small knives. "Oh, sweet, we paid for exclusivity, you understand." And then the offer, "You can move to the jump seat in the galley." The jump seat, a folding thing opposite a coffee machine and directly next to the lavatory, that is engineered for discomfort, for the kind of humiliation you can't stage without props. "Take the jump seat," the captain set his throat a motor of righteous tone. "Or I call security." I could have called someone. My ops desk, my fleet contact the person whose job it is to make sure men like Hale respect manifests. And the plane would have sat on the ramp while everyone argued, and I would have made my point. But there's a different kind of lesson when you let the person who thinks they're superior show their true color. So I took the jump seat. Act 2. The waiting, the reveal, the rip. You can feel contempt the same way you feel turbulence, a low vibration under your bones. Sitting by the galley, I watched the curtain and heard the soft things they said when they thought they were alone, jokes about someone in a hoodie, laughter at supposed service people, and then the conversation that changed the flight. The businessman, Preston Hale, not related to the captain, was on his laptop, fingers sliding over keys like teeth over paper. He was pitching a deal, inflating numbers using my company's name as a headline, and that's when the world did a small, delicious loop. His screen flashed to a profile, and there I was, a Forbes headshot, a net worth snippet. And suddenly, the man who had dismissed me saw his ticket to a boardroom imploding in his hands. He froze like a marionette with its strings cut, watching the woman he'd just disrespected sitting in the galley alive and very real. The panic that followed was beautiful and petty all at once. Chloe's laugh turned brittle. Preston's face emptied. Captain Hale turned from smirk to pale, his uniform no longer armor. He realized he'd just told the owner of a small aviation fleet to sit by a toilet. He realized he had threatened to call the police on his employer. That's the thing about assumptions. They're only as brave as the person who believes them. But the story didn't become a runaway train of vengeance in that moment. Instead, turbulence hit. Literal turbulence. And the plane convulsed, bottles flew, a bottle of Prosecco shattered against a bulkhead. Everyone's voices went thin with fear. In the middle of that chaotic shaking, Preston crawled into the galley to grab his laptop back, and we were face to face. Not a scream, not a threat, just a cold line. You should not sign that deal. There's a hidden clause. Subsection 4C. You'd be buying liabilities, not assets. He turned a color people get when they know their career is over. Chloe sputtered, "Oh my God, you're kidding." I wasn't. I watched the man who used my name for leverage realize he had been playing poker with the wrong deck. Act 3. The response. The reckoning. The after. We landed in the mountain air, and the descent into our little private field was rough a slope that tests pilots and egos in equal measure. As we rolled to the terminal, 3 black SUVs sat like sentries, and a man in a wool coat waited in the snow. He was my director of operations, a friend who'd been alerted by a message I sent earlier in the flight, not to create spectacle but to ensure the dignity of the people on my planes. Captain Hale stepped out expecting applause, but instead he was greeted like a man called in on fraud. There were questions, a formalization of what he'd done, threats to intimidate a paying passenger, false arrests, the works, and he was escorted aside. Preston and Chloe were left sputtering in the cold, their Instagram polish soaked in humiliation. I watched them fumbling for explanations that sounded like excuses, and I felt something like exhaustion and a little mercy. Because this story isn't mouth-watering revenge, it's procedural. I made one decision that night to give them rope and let them hang themselves. And when the director of operations offered Sarah, the nervous attendant who had tried to be kind to me, a new position in my personal fleet, the scene shifted. Compassion is cheap to talk about and expensive to practice, so I took my scarf off and gave it to her, then offered her a job. She cried. I cried. We both knew what the job meant. A paycheck, a chance to work without watching people's faces turn nasty. Before I left, I told Preston quietly that his deal was dead. I don't do business with people who show no empathy, I said, and I meant it. Chloe begged for forgiveness that sounded like a PR statement. Captain Hale mouthed that he didn't know. Ignorance is a flimsy blanket. The plane started to slide away down the ramp. My convoy idled, and I stepped into a heated SUV. Hands numb, but heart strange. Heavy and buoyant at once. Karma, that word is clumsy and moralistic, but in that moment it felt like a precise instrument calibrated to the weight of small cruelties. What I want you to feel in this is the smallness and the vastness at once, a folding seat next to a coffee machine and a boardroom's worth of power. The cruelty of someone thinking they own the world and the quiet authority of someone who actually does. The beauty of a person who chooses to protect the timid. That's the real victory. So here's where I leave it for you. The finale that isn't a tidy credit roll. If you were in my shoes, would you have revealed yourself earlier, flashed a card, made them stop mid-sentence? Or would you have sat, watched, and let them show their true selves so consequences could follow? There's no single right answer, and that's what keeps the debate alive. Call to action. I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, is it better to confront immediately or to wait and let people reveal themselves? Have you ever been judged by your clothes or your quiet? Did you stand up or did you let it go? Share the story, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, tag them. If this felt like a satisfying bit of comeuppance hit-like, if it made you uncomfortable, say why. Let's talk about the small cruelties and how we fix them, because stories are only useful if they change the way we behave.